Welcome to Ignite Success. I'm your host, Snowden McFall, 25-year professional speaker, 6-time author, and coach for women. And with me today is an extraordinary woman, Dr. Tammy Hodo, and she owns the company All Things Diverse. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you for having me, Snowden.
So you were just telling me you have a fascinating background, which makes me a perfect person to speak on diversity. Give me a little bit of that information.
So I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is the third most segregated metropolitan area in America.
Woo, still, huh?
Still, very much so.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What are the other two?
Chicago and Detroit.
Oh, wow.
While people would think it's Southern,
Yeah,
it's not necessarily
it's
that.
not. Wow, how about that?
And in Milwaukee, I'm a product of an interracial marriage. So my parents married in 1962, before Loving versus Virginia, before it was legal for interracial couples to marry.
Wow. Did they face a lot of backlash for that?
A lot of backlash. My mother is a German American, so she is an American citizen. She was not an immigrant. My father obviously was African American, hence why I have the beautiful tone that I have.
That's right. That's great.
But when they did marry, my mother had to move into what was considered the black neighborhood.
Sure.
Because they couldn't live anywhere else.
Wow.
But she found that they were pretty inclusive and accepting of her in that neighborhood. But they did have a lot of struggles in regards to my father losing a job when my mother came up there to pick him up one time. So I recall picking my mom up and going inside to get her because she was running late. And then the next day she went to the job and was given a nice severance package and told that she didn't need to return.
Oh, wow. So both of them lost their jobs because of racial issues.
Yes.
Wow. Wow, that's got to be very difficult. And how long have you been doing diversity training?
I have been doing diversity training about 5 years, but I was in academia before. So my PhD is in urban studies from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. But my minor is in sociology, and I specifically focus on race, class, gender, and ethnicity.
Well, I know that it's an area that people don't realize has a big impact. Diversity has a big impact on productivity and employee engagement. And I think diversity is such an important issue and so important for companies to embrace because there's such a richness in diverse populations in the workplace. Can you speak about that and the productivity piece?
Well, we find oftentimes that people do leave the workplace due to the lack of diversity or inclusivity.
Right.
No one wants to be viewed as a token or wants to feel that sense of otherness.
Right. And
so if your company has a high turnover rate and a low productivity rate, you probably have some inclusivity issues. The new generation is not standing.
No, they're not.
For those issues, they have no problem relocating and getting a new position.
Right.
And so it's important for organizations to understand the relevance of diversity and to gain a sense of how to create this inclusive environment where everyone feels that sense of belonging if you want to retain employees.
Right, because belonging and connecting are such important parts of a healthy workplace culture.
Yes, very much.
So what do you find to be the most important things that companies need to focus on when they're approaching a diversity program?
I think that they need to really start with doing a climate survey and asking their employees kind of where they see a deficit. So where do you see that we're lacking? So doing a climate survey will allow them to understand what gaps they have. And as long as it's anonymous, people are very forthcoming.
That's great.
Whether it be issues within the LGBTQI community, Islamophobia, xenophobia, racism, misogynistic attitudes, things like that. So I always recommend doing a climate survey first.
Right.
And off that data, then we can begin to develop programs to address those areas that they need assistance in.
And then there are companies, I know Florida Blue is one that has special interest groups devoted to various different organizations, various different diverse groups, and makes time for them to get together and does special events for them. Do you find that that's unusual or more common?
I think it's becoming more common.
Mm-hmm.
So on Thursday, I'll actually speak at CSX,
Oh,
and
there you go.
it's their affinity group for
Right.
African Americans. But
Exactly.
everyone's invited. But that's the group that reached out to me to
Right.
ask for me to come and give a conversation about the relevance of diversity.
Right.
And what I typically do is I like to gear my message towards that industry. So
Yes.
at CSX, I'll talk about the Pullman Porters.
Oh, wow.
Right, which was a group of African Americans who 3 years after the emancipation were able to go to work on the railroads.
Wow.
And they served as porters versus sharecropping.
Right.
And they had an opportunity to travel the world, and they were
Mm.
messengers of, culture, and they
Right.
were influential. They delivered Black newspapers around, and they really were a catalyst for the mass migration that we saw of African Americans from the South to the North.
Huh. Very interesting. Yes, I think those affinity groups are so important, but I think we still have a long way to go, unfortunately, in this country in appreciating diversity on all levels. Do you see that too?
I do very much. I think I'm always amazed how certain people or certain groups are seen as individuals when
Mm.
minority groups are seen as a group.
Yes.
So I've been in situations where people think I'm the subject matter expert for all things Black, and I say, well, I'm half German, so we could talk about that. But I can't be the spokesperson for all things Black, or
Right.
Hispanics deal with the same issues.
Right.
Those who are in the LGBTQI community, same
Yes.
thing.
So right. And now with Me Too movements and
Mhm.
there's a whole broad spectrum, so it's kind of like a brush painted, oh, then you all know about everything and we're all individuals.
Exactly.
So how can people get a hold of you and find out about your diversity trainings?
So I have my own business, and my website is allthingsdiverse.com.
Okay.
I also recently was a participant in TEDx Jacksonville
Great.
here in October, where I talked about the social implications of race.
Mm.
And that talk is available via YouTube as well as my website. And I'm just accessible. And what I really want to do is help people become culturally competent.
Right. It's such an important skill set. We've got to learn and appreciate and embrace everyone in our workplaces and everyone in our country. I mean, particularly right now with all the divisiveness, it's so important.
It is. And reality is that we have more similarities than
That's
we have
right.
differences.
Of course. Of course. And we have so much to learn and benefit from each other. There's such a wealth of knowledge to be shared.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Tammy.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I truly enjoyed this opportunity.
My pleasure.